Less than 3 weeks away from the start of the 2025 NFL Draft, we are joined by a very, very special guest here on this show. It's none other than ESPN host and diehard Jet fan Mike Greenberg, who's going to be gracing us with his presence right here, right now on NY Flight Jets Talk.
Jets, Jets, let's go.
Jets wide receiver Wesley Walker. Wesley, how you doing today? ESPN writer Mr. Rich Cimini, Jets reporter for The Athletic, Mr. Zach Rosenblatt, Hall of Famer and Jets legend Mr. Marty Lyons.
Your host, Connor Law.
What is going on, everyone? Hello and welcome back here to another edition of NY Flight Jets Talk here on this Monday, April 7th, 2025. I can't thank you guys all enough for tuning in. Make sure you smash that like button and hit subscribe. It's completely free and it helps us grow significantly here on the show. I can't thank you guys enough. All of your support as always, but let's get right into it. Joining me right now, one of the best in the business, ESPN host, ESPN anchor, and most importantly, a diehard Jet fan. Mike Greenberg is kind enough to grace us with his presence here on the show. Greeny, super happy we were able to make this work. I can't thank you enough. And how you doing today?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm doing great. And I at the risk of sounding patronizing, I'm very impressed. That was a really good open and a really good introduction. And whenever I talk to young people of any age, your age, or even substantially older, who tell me they're interested in a career in broadcasting, I always say to them, do you have a podcast? Do you put things together all the time? And if you don't, why not? So the fact that you've done all of this at your age, I'm really impressed and proud of you, and I'm excited to be a guest on the show.
I really do appreciate that, Greeny, and you're someone I've idolized. You're one of the many people who actually inspired me to go ahead and start this podcast. Watching you on ESPN, whether it's Get Up or the draft coverage you've just started, is really, really awesome. So I appreciate you. You obviously great to be with you here, and then idolizing you for the past few years, which I really, really do appreciate, and everything you've done for this industry as well as a whole. But I'm gonna hop right into it. Obviously, Greeny, this offseason for the Jets has been a little polarizing. The fan base being pretty much split on the Aaron Rodgers decision. A lot of people liking the Aaron Glenn hiring. And then you look at the free agent signings this team's made so far. Some like the idea of, you're not overpaying for someone. You're trying to stay silent. You're not trying to go out and get all those big names on the market. And then some are like, hey, where are these big name signings? Greeny, if you had to put a grade on how the Jets have kind of handled free agency, the Aaron Rodgers decision, put everything to account, how would you say Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn have handled their first half of the offseason?
It's an excellent question. The answer is it's almost impossible to answer. The grade, here's what I'll say. If this means that they get an A or an A minus, then so be it. They've handled it the way I would have handled it. If I were the person in charge, I think I would have made most of the same decisions that they made. I do not think bringing back Rodgers would have been the right move.
Right with
the vibes were so bad. There was just everything in the world wrong. It is time, not it was time. It is time for a new start and a new direction. And that doesn't mean that Justin Fields is going to be the quarterback of this team for a decade. But I do believe it was time to move in an entirely new direction. Rodgers comes with so much. There is so much more than just the actual playing of quarterback that comes with him. And I think if Aaron Glenn is going to come in here and put his stamp, make this his team, make the personality. The great teams generally tend to take on the personality of their coaches. If this team was going to take on Aaron Glenn's personality, I believe that moving on from Rodgers was a necessity. Doesn't mean I don't think he will play well. I think there's a chance he plays very well in Pittsburgh, assuming that's where he winds up. That said, I think moving on from him was the right thing to do. I think Justin Fields was the best of all the possible options. I have Jet fans walk up to me in the street every day and tell me they're not enthusiastic about Justin Fields. And the response I give them is, well, I looked into this. Neither Josh Allen nor Patrick Mahomes were available. Okay, so you have to choose in life and in sports from the list of realistic options. I think of all of the realistic options, he was the best. He's a flyer on someone who I think clearly has some upside and there is no long-term commitment. So if it goes badly, you're right back into looking for a new answer next year. So I liked that decision. As far as spending big money on free agents, the Jets are at a very complicated place. Franchises in sports, particularly in football because of the hard salary cap, they exist in multiple stages of trying to win now. The Jets are a win now team, but they're starting over again. That's a very complicated. A year ago, with largely the same roster, save the quarterback, this was a team that was thinking about trying to win the Super Bowl. And now here you are a year later. They're too good to be starting all over again, starting from scratch. They have too many good young players. But I don't think that any realistic fan thinks that Kansas City, Buffalo, and the small handful of other teams in the AFC are particularly worried about us. So that leaves us sort of betwixt and between. So I think I would have done what these guys have done, which is fill out the roster with good players. I think if indeed these mock drafts are right, I hope the Jets take the offensive lineman in the first round. There are a bunch of tight ends in this draft. I know a lot of Jet fans want Tyler Warren, the tight end out of Penn State. I will say this. There are multiple good tight ends that will be available when the Jets pick in the second round. I like the idea of taking the best available offensive lineman. If that's Armand Membu, great. I think Will Campbell will be off the board by the time the Jets pick at 7. But I like the idea of getting a bookend tackle to go on the other side of Fashion U, build an offensive line. There's nothing better in the sport to have than a young, good offensive line that in theory should be there forever, or, for a decade, and take your shot with Justin and see where it goes. So that was a long answer to a direct question. I think they've handled it right. It doesn't necessarily mean that they will be really good this year, but I would bet you everything I have they're better this year than they were last year.
100%. And what I'll say about what you mentioned kind of there with Aaron Rodgers, when the Jets traded for Aaron Rodgers, they knew they had a 2-year window to win. The first year, we all know what happened. He went down 4 plays into the season. That was a scratch. Next season, which was last season, 2024, you went out, you win 5 games. I think that experiment's over, especially with a new regime coming in. You look at Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh being fired in the middle of the season. I think it was a great move to move off of Rodgers. And I agree with everything you said about Justin Fields. Is he proven as a quarterback in this league? No, he has not solidified himself to the first round status that, he's shown his athleticism. That's the thing. He showed glimmers of hope. He has a better chance in my eyes of becoming this team's franchise quarterback than a Carson Wentz or Marcus Mariota, 2 of the other names in consideration. So you might as well take a flyer on the 26-year-old who went 4-2 in 6 starts last year and has a ton of athleticism. So agree with everything you said there on Fields.
Say 2 things about Fields. So I went to school in the Big Ten. I went to Northwestern. And Justin Fields was a stud at Ohio State who would have been the 2nd pick in the draft if there had been no football season in 2020. You will recall, and anyone listening to us will recall, that in 2020, everything was in a complete state of flux because of the pandemic. The Big Ten, almost the very first move the Big Ten made at the beginning of the pandemic was to announce that there would be no football season. If there had been no football season, if the Big Ten had not played, Justin Fields would have been the 2nd pick in the draft behind Trevor Lawrence. He knew that. Everyone knew that. Justin Fields almost single-handedly led a player movement, for lack of a better word, a player-led movement that resulted in the Big Ten reversing course, changing its mind, and playing a season. That took leadership. That took heart, that took guts, that took any number of things that you want in a franchise quarterback and in a leader. So that's 1. 2, his talent is off the charts, and he has never been in a position to really flex it. His situation in Chicago was a disaster, top to bottom. Anyone who has followed that situation, that team, that organization is well aware. They fired the coach. They brought in the offensive line people who didn't like him. He never had a chance to succeed. Last year, I believe, I don't know what the heck actually happened there. I don't know why they never went back to him after that offense fell off a cliff in Pittsburgh. But I think there were a lot of issues involving coaching and other dynamics in Pittsburgh that were at play. This is the first time Justin Fields, I think, has a real shot. You mentioned his athleticism. If you're not going to be a great player, and I certainly right now he's not a great player, be great at something. He's at least great at one thing. I think that there's only one quarterback in the entire NFL who runs with the ball better than he does, and that's Lamar Jackson. So he is at minimum great at one thing. Let's build from that. Let's put together a good offensive line. Let's put together a run heavy with Breece Hall, et cetera, offensive scheme. Let's try and showcase Garrett Wilson as much as we possibly can. Obviously, the Ohio State connection there is hopefully at least somewhat meaningful. I think he is a really good roll of the dice. And there was, as I said before, no long-term commitment. So if he doesn't wind up being as good as I've always believed he has the potential to be, you're just back at it next year trying again.
100%. I agree with what you're saying. I think there's something to be said for, you bring in a new offensive coordinator like Tanner Engstrand, a young, innovative play caller who learned from one of the most innovative offensive schemes in Detroit. I'm going to be interested to see how he kind of tailors the offense around Justin Fields, because not only can you shift over to a more run-heavy scheme, Greeny, we know he has the arm talent, but he really hasn't had an opportunity with a strong offensive line in front of him to showcase how he can air the ball out downfield. So that's another thing I want to see out of Fields this season for sure. You brought up Breece Hall. That's something I want to get into. The trade talks are coming around now with Breece Hall. 1 year left on his rookie contract. He was a second-round pick, so there's no fifth-year option. So he's going into the last year of his contract right now. No extension in place. Coming off a down season compared to what he did in 2023. I mean, fumbled the ball 6 times, doubling his career total from 2022 and 2023, fell off in yards per carry. Pretty much every main metric you look for in a running back. Really didn't look, as elusive as we saw in 2023. Wasn't able to hit the hole that hard. His acceleration kind of looked like it took a step or two back. Would you be on board with trading Breece Hall in the right package, or you want to hold on to him and see what he could do this season with a more run-heavy scheme with Justin Fields under center?
The optimal phrase in there is depending on what you can get for him for the right package, as you said. Look, the nucleus of a championship roster was supposed to be all those guys that we drafted in 22,
yeah,
the Vegas draft, all those guys. And unfortunately, because of injury and any number of other extremely terrible circumstances, we've really never seen an opportunity for it to come together. I love Garrett Wilson. I think Garrett Wilson has the talent, the demeanor, the potential to be a top 5 NFL wide receiver. Him I would hold on to for dear life. Breece Hall, I think, has a chance to be a really good player. But I think there are a lot of really good players at that position. I don't know that he's Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry or one of these guys who makes a colossal difference. He's not Jahmyr Gibbs, who played this role in that Detroit offense and might be the most dynamic offensive weapon, candidly, in the entire league. So as much as it would pain me, I mean, bordering on kill me to do this, I do think you have to consider that. I do think that you can get 2 guys who will be able to do all of the things that he is going to be expected to do and start the clock over again on running backs. I don't think there's anywhere in the world you sign him this offseason. So then you're running the risk of losing him for nothing. There are excellent backs in this draft too, as there are every single year. Every single year, there are serviceable to above that running backs available in the draft. I don't want to see the Jets do that early because I think they have too many other needs. But I think, to use your words, if the right package presents itself, that's something that I would regretfully feel was the right thing to do.
I'm with you 1,000% there, Greeny. And I released my first mock draft for the publication I write for, JetsXFactor.com, and I kind of came up with a unique theme. I traded Breece Hall to the Broncos in exchange for the 85th overall pick. So you got a 3rd-round pick in exchange for Hall compared to you try to play it out let him walk, depending on what you do in free agency. Maybe you get a 5th or 6th round comp pick for him, depending how active you are in the free agent market next season. I traded them for the 3rd round pick. I mean, there's a lot of connections in Denver. Muji coming from that organization, Aaron Glenn and Sean Payton having that connection. I mean, them needing running backs after Javonte Williams walking in free agency. And then I took Ashton Genty with the 7th overall pick. And I know, like you said, you didn't want to use a high pick on a running back. And I get that 1000%. He's not my number 1 choice for the Jets at 7, even if they trade Breece Hall. The way I viewed it though, because a lot of Jet fans, they hear running back at 7. Oh my God, what are we thinking? Using a premium pick on a running back? Let's keep this in mind. Aaron Glenn does not value premium positions. He values premium football players. There are only a few blue chip talents in this year's draft class in my eyes, and I think Ashton Genty is one of them, one of the 3 alongside Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. This team is not, like you referenced earlier, Greeny, they're an all-in team, but they're not scrunched in that 2-year window where you have the veteran quarterback, you need to go and win. You might as well draft the best football player that should be in consideration who's on the board. And that maybe could be Ashton Genty. I think if he's there at 7 after you trade Breece, he certainly needs to be in the conversation. I don't know if he's going to be there at 7. I think he's going to Las Vegas with the 6th overall pick. My whole argument, though, is he should at least be in the conversation. People should not just dismiss him because he's a running back. Look at what the Lions did with Jahmyr Gibbs in 2023. No one liked that. No Lion fan liked that. Come on, what are we doing? Using a top 15 pick on a running back after we signed David Montgomery? Detroit, nor their fan base would think twice about making that move today. So I think you got to value premium football players rather premium positions, and that is what Aaron Glenn has shown throughout the entirety of his coaching career. So that my whole argument there is I wouldn't be opposed to it. Would you be opposed to drafting Ashton Genty after you trade Breece Hall? Do you just not want to swim in those waters?
Well, I'm very impressed. So that was extremely well thought out.
I appreciate it.
I wouldn't do it.
Okay.
That's not what I would do. I don't know where Genty is going to go. I've seen a lot of people mocking him at 6 to the Raiders. I have some people still telling me to watch Shador to the Raiders, even though they re-signed Geno Smith. I personally believe that the best thing you can have on an NFL team, save for a legitimately great quarterback, is a great offensive line. There are 2 eras of sustained, I'm not going to say greatness because it probably never
success
that level, sustained goodness in recent Jets memory that I'm thinking of that involved offensive linemen that were high draft picks. A million years ago, long before your parents were young, the Jets had 2 great bookend tackles, Marvin Powell and Chris Ward. And those teams in the early 80s, those were the first Jet teams that made the playoffs in my lifetime. That team went to the AFC Championship game in 82, the ill-fated A.J. Dewey game. The Jets had a tremendous offensive line built primarily around the 2 bookend tackles. Then fast forward, whatever year it was, Mike and I were doing the draft with John Clayton, 02, 03, whatever year it is that we took DeBrickashaw Ferguson and Nick Mangold, both in the first round. And there were a lot of Jet fans that didn't like it. We had 2 first-round picks, and we took 2 offensive linemen. P.S., they were the most important part. Those Rex teams that made the Mangini team that made the playoffs, the Rex teams, all of those teams were what they were because of the offensive line, and those guys were a critical piece of it. If they love one of the tackles, and there are 2 that I think will go early. One of them is Armand Membu, who tore up the combine. He was the talk of the combine, which sometimes makes you a little nervous because he wasn't being projected to go.
That's my stance. That's my stance.
It makes me nervous. I don't disagree with you. The other is Will Campbell. People talk a little bit about him having short arms, but I don't know. Mel is mocking him very high right now. I think if one of those 2 guys is there at 7, then you take him. I don't know. So here's the problem. Here's what I will tell you. I have people telling me that they think Omarion Hampton is a better prospect than Ashton Genty. I have people telling me that Travion Henderson from Ohio State is the next Jahmyr Gibbs. Okay. I have people telling me about a bunch of other running backs. So I guess what I'm saying is, and I don't mean to sound so much like Mel here, I don't know that Ashton Genty is that much better than some of the options that you might avail yourself of a little bit later. Now, if he winds up being Jahmyr Gibbs, then of course you want him. And he had about as good a college season as just about anyone has had in forever. But that's not what I hope happens. Let's put it that way. So my job on the draft is I'm very straight down the middle. I will acknowledge that I'm a fan of the Jets at times, but I'm not going to. No one is tuning into that to hear my immediate reaction. If the Jets wind up selecting, if Roger Goodell says with the 7th pick in the 2025 NFL draft, the New York Jets select Ashton Genty, running back, Boise State, I'm going to be working really hard to keep it right down, read the paragraph of preparation that I've done for him, because that is not the direction I want us to go. I want us to go with an offensive lineman.
I get that.
And if they don't love either of them, then take the tight end. I think the tight end from Penn State is a can't miss prospect. I think he is going to be great.
Greeny, I really can't thank you enough sparing some time for us. I know we got to wrap things up. It was truly an honor to have you here on the show. And everyone, I appreciate you tuning in. The final question, though, I asked to every single guest I have on this show. If you could pick anyone in the world for dinner guests, dead or alive, who are you taking?
Well, I love that question. There are a lot of different directions it can go. We're including the dead. So it's not just people who are available to us now.
Yes, correct. And it could be a family member. It could be someone in broadcasting, an athlete, anyone.
Well, if you're going to include family members, then you're going to get into like I would love to have one more dinner with my father, but that's not the spirit of what you're asking me. So
it could be anyone. People get family members all the time.
So in order to keep this in the genre in which we are speaking, I will keep it to sports figures. There are any number of people that I would choose from outside of the sports world, but it would take me forever to narrow it down to 4.
Yes.
So let's keep it to 4. My favorite sport is golf. So I would love to have dinner with Ben Hogan. I find him one of the most fascinating people in the history of all sports. Ben Hogan was basically crushed in a car accident. Came back and won almost all of his majors after that. He was so legendarily focused. Gary Player once told me a story that he was playing a par 3 with Hogan in a tournament. Player made an ace. It makes a hole in one. Everybody goes crazy. Hogan hits his shot up onto the green. And when they're walking off after Hogan putts out, he turns to Gary Player and says, "What did you make on that hole?" He was so focused, he missed the fact that Player had made an ace. So if I'm going to pick one person from golf, I'll take Ben Hogan. If we're going to take one person from the world of sport, from the Jets, I mean, we got to have at least one Jet on there. I mean, Joe Namath is my favorite athlete that ever lived. I've been fortunate enough that I've had dinner.
That's awesome.
In his presence. I MC his golf outing at Bethpage every year. And I'll tell your audience a great story about what an incredibly good person Joe Namath is. My mother loves Joe Namath, as all women of her age do. The year my dad died, which was 2016, I was hosting Joe's event in the fall. My dad had died about 7-8 months earlier, and Joe heard about that without my saying anything to him, and he arranged for my mom to be seated next to him at the event that night.
That's incredible.
My mom sat next to him, and I have tons of pictures of it. And it just goes to show you what a great guy he is. So in honor of my love and admiration for Joe Namath, I will put him on the list. And then in the interest of not taking up too much time with this, we need 2 more sports people. I mean, I think I would say Jackie Robinson and Muhammad Ali. Like, wow. I just think I was once in a room. Jackie Robinson, of course, I never met, but there is no greater, or Jesse Owens, someone like that, like someone who accomplished the opportunity to be able to sit and say, you know, to Jesse Owens, what was it like to march into that stadium in front of Hitler and win the golds? Someone like Ali to have changed the world in the way he did. So I'll go with those 2. I'll go with those 2. I can't think of better options. And if nothing else, the conversation listening to Joe Namath talk to Muhammad Ali, who actually probably were friends, that would be worth the price of admission for sure.
Greeny, you're really the best. I appreciate you hopping on. You got any final thoughts here to share with everyone before we wrap things up?
I'm optimistic. I mean, I think I like Aaron Glenn. I like the direction that things are going. I like sort of look, we went from people always ask me, what kind of personality do you want in the coach? I say, I don't care. Eric Mangini was basically a mute. Rex Ryan never stopped talking. They coached consecutively. They both won. When they were winning, I loved them. And when they were losing, I couldn't stand them. It really doesn't make any difference so long as you get it right. I think Aaron Glenn, at least we know he is a beloved former Jet. He cares about the organ. It's not just another job to him. He would have had other coaching opportunities. He wanted to be the coach of the Jets. The organization means something to him. There is a lot of good, young-ish talent on this roster, and it just needs to be unlocked. Listen, I don't want to relive the past. The Jets of 2024, I don't know how one would quantify this, may well have been the worst coach team in the history of the sport. I don't know that there has ever been a team that had worse coaching. That team is way better than its record would indicate. So if they figure a few things out, a few balls bounce their way that bounce the other direction, I do not think it's unrealistic to think that the Jets will be playing meaningful games in December and will be playing for a playoff spot. I do. So I'm more optimistic than I think a lot of the Jet fans are. And let's see what happens in a few weeks, because that's the next really big step.
1000%, Greeny, you're the best. Can't thank you enough. Everyone, thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow at 8 p.m. EST talking all things New York Jets. But for now, that'll do it for us. He's the great Mike Greenberg of ESPN, and I'm your host, Connor Long, signing off here on NY Flight Jets Talk. JETS, 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 Jets.